Hi everyone, and welcome to a real-time coloring video, and this is really about adding those details to change a image. Everything here is real-time, so I will give you a lot of tips and tricks and ideas and a lot of just babbling about my own life, because that is how my videos work. I hope you like it. If you do want to see this sped up, I do have the card making video with everything sped up to about 500%, 5 times, and that will be linked in the description down below, up in the corner and at the end of the video. That also contains all the kind of card making part, because this will only contain the coloring and the drawing, because, well, I thought you might want to see this. So details, that is a thing you can do. There was a challenge over at Make It Crafty a couple of months ago, and I actually made this card for that challenge as my DT, but I never posted it myself. It was only on the challenged blog. I made a bunch of videos then, but I never got down to edit them and doing all of those things, and I'm trying to catch up, so here's another one of those. This is a classy Olivia. She is one of the Make It Crafty stamps. She has the style that I really like, those big beautiful manga eyes and everything. I love the designer who does these. They are just gorgeous. However, I'm not kind of a normal girl. I'm a little bit odd. I think we all are a little bit odd in our own ways, but I really like different kind of coloring, strong bold colors, strong bold patterns. I'm not a super flowery girl, I say, and then I've actually colored flower all over her legs, but I'm doing that because it's easy. So when the thing was, another fellow DT, she had given her character some kind of lacy, just simple lacy pantyhose, and I thought it was so cool, and her character really, it brought something to that character. So I decided, well, I'm gonna take her idea, because yeah, it's her idea. I'm gonna try to link in the description down below the actual post she did on the Make It Crafty page for that, so that you can see that. But I decided I wanted to make it my own thing, so I went through the different characters, realized I hadn't really colored up this girl, which I think is an awesome character. However, she's more of a 60s, a classy vibe, and what I am all about is being bold and strong and screaming. So I went in and I made her, I think I would call it something like goth or hard pop or something like that. I don't know, I'm not following those kind of trends anymore. I just dress the way I like, but I do like the combination of using a lot of black and a pop of pink. So I went in and I took and sketched out with just an ordinary pen all of these little flowers. Now these flowers are super simple to do. It's basically a circle in the middle and then 4 to 5 circles around, or a little bit more than half circles around, just doing kind of a cloud shape that connects with the circle every time. It's super simple, and it's one of those go-to things when I'm sitting and listening to things, when I'm in a meeting. Sketching helps me concentrate on the people instead of kind of losing myself, and therefore I thought, well, those are easy to do, so I don't have to think about more details. So I did all of these cute little flowers, and I used the pen to draw them, and then I fill them in with a 0.2 Copic multiliner. A Copic multiliner is Copic safe, so that means that when I color with my Copics on top of this, I don't have to worry about smudging. But I do want to say, with real marker cardstock, like the make it colorful, make it color, well, the paper I use, which is Zoe tested a whole bunch of papers and came to the conclusion that this paper is awesome, and she's very correct about that. This kind of paper are very, very dense, and because it's dense, ink takes a little bit longer time to kind of go into the paper, and therefore you don't want to just sketch your lines and then directly go on with your Copics. You want it to have a little time to kind of relax before going with your Copics on top of it. And this is also one of the reasons why when I actually start coloring her, I'm not going in with skin color to begin with. Instead, I'm actually going in with the dress. For the kind of lace part, I'm making this super simple. I'm not thinking, oh, I'm gonna have hexagons or this or that. These are super teeny tiny details, and I don't want to sit here all day doing these kinds of drawing. It does take me maybe half an hour, 15 minutes to half an hour to do this anyhow. But I'm just doing stripes, and then I'm doing these little horizontal stripes and then vertical little things, just connecting those. And I'm trying to overlap them so that they're kind of not meeting each other, these little lines, even though I did get some that up there that met each other. And that is how I kind of just create this. And I'm using the 0.1 for the lacy part, but the 0.2 for the flowers to give a little bit more variation of the line width. And this also makes the flower stand out. But to make the flower stand out but still feel like a part of the pantyhose, I actually, when I did these lines, you can see that I didn't draw them in the whole of the flower, but I see that as an extra part of the lace, that there is holes where the center of the flower is. It was a lot of fun doing this, and somewhat time consuming. But yeah, it's such a simple thing to do, and it's really changed up the whole image. Another thing you could do, for example, as she is a classy girl, she might want to have white lace pants instead, and then go for the more classy version. And then you would color your whole image the way you want to, and then you would maybe go in with a white pen and add those details in, like any kind of white liner. There are so many different ones out there, and I think it's an experiment because they work differently under different circumstances, that I have learned. There's a lot of people that talk about that their white pens kind of clog up a lot, and doesn't draw perfect lines, and that's because of the humidity that's actually there. But I never had really any issues with pens that way, except for when I forget to put the lids on them, and then they kind of dry out and just, yeah. But that happens. So after finishing the pants, I decided, well, I think I want her to have like these fingerless lace gloves. I'm thinking about a pair I had when I was younger. When I was like 15, 16, I was a oddball. So much the oddball. I've always been an oddball. But like, I didn't understand social constructs, and I didn't understand anything like that. I could go in one day in more like hip-hop clothes, like big baggy pants, a big shirt, and just go around being hip-hoppy, and was listening to that. And then I have other days when I was listening to black rock or like rock symphonies and stuff like that, because I love music and I love so many different kinds of music. And then I would come in like a black skirt, my dad's way too big leather jacket, which I was in love with when I was 15, 16. And then I had these red lace gloves that I have gotten, I think I was 6 years old when I got them, from a friend of my parents. And I kept them and I just love them. And they're just, I think I still have them. They're red and they're, yeah, I wouldn't use them today. Also, they itch. But those were the ones I was thinking about when I saw this, or when I like, yeah, I want to put this into her arms, and that would kind of enhance this goth effect, because just having the lacy pants on her legs, it's just like, okay, you have cool lace on your legs, but adding it to your hands, it kind of brings that extra that probably classy Olivia wouldn't be wearing, because she has another style that she really enjoys wearing. So yeah, so I had a lot of fun creating this, thinking about who she was. And this is a new thing for me. I'm not usually I am, but I'm not thinking about it this way. Oh, I'm babbling right now. But I have realized that among all my crafts, all my things that I really enjoy doing, what I'm doing is a combination of teaching and telling a story. Everything I do is teaching and telling a story. And that is an important part of my life. And realizing that I'm this person, and my sort of brand, when you do videos like this, you end up having a YouTube brand. And my brand is that, a tutorial and storytelling. And making cards for me is storytelling. And I think I need to think about that even more. I need to kind of, what do I want this card to be? Not just a beautiful card, but something that actually means to me. And that doesn't mean that it has to mean something for anyone else, or even for the person I'm giving it to, but it needs to mean something for me, to keep me energized about this. I'm on a learning kick. I'm a periodic person. I'm a very periodic person. In periods I do this, in periods I do that. My YouTubing is one of those few constants that I've had throughout my life, or the last 10 years. That and my health issues, but hey, that's how life is. Anyhow, right now I have been watching so many videos about photos, about photo editing, about video editing, and I'm so inspired just to make all of these tutorials and edit them, and doing my voiceovers and thinking about how to do really nice photos. And I'm hoping to be able to bring more of that into the videos without losing what they are. Because that is very important for me, is that I don't want to add a whole bunch of things to the video that doesn't add to your experience. Like, I remade my intro that you might have seen. That's my remade intro. It probably will be remade a couple of times more. I have rebranded my whole blog, Facebook page, everything in with this kind of rebranded thing with the intros and everything, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It was so much fun. I learned how to do the animations, so this isn't a pre-bought animation. I actually went into Motion, which is basically After Effects for Final Cut Pro, and I went in and I animated everything to time with each other, and I had a lot of fun, and I still have to speed it up or make it longer every time to slow it down, actually, because it is going way too fast in real life, and I don't really know how to speed it up in motion and just add frames or something, so I'm just making it longer when I'm adding it to my videos. So yeah, that was something that happened, but it was a lot of fun. So we're into the coloring. We actually finished the drawing of the lace, and now we're gonna color everything. And I'm doing something, like I said, I'm doing a little bit of a different take on this, and it was a while since I did a different take. I usually have I'm one of those persons, I'm not only periodic, but I'm very predictable, because I do things when I try to make everything like waste as little time as possible. I like to eat the same things every day. I like to eat them at the same time every day. I like to drink the same amount of coffee every day, so on, so forth. But usually I do the skin, and then I do the hair, and then I do the clothing. And in this case, I think one of the things was I had no clue what color hair I wanted her to have. I had a feeling that I wanted it to be black or pink, but I wanted to show how much, or see how much pink I had in the rest of the character before I decided on which color. So I started with a dress, and I'm using one of my favorite color combinations, the RB20s. These are not very easy to blend. I'm going to tell you that straightforward. They are not easy to blend. So if you like to have a very, very smooth blend, this is not the combination for you, because you go, the 21 is a very light color. The 29 is a very, very dark color. But the steps between them, like the 25 and the 29, is just a little bit too long between each other. And then you have the 23 and the 25, where the 23 has actually a little bit too much or less pigment and too much blending solution in it. 21 and 23 do blend pretty nicely. So you do get this effect. So then you have to do the double take. You have to go over the blending twice if you want to have a good blend. I don't remember if I did go over this twice. I might not have that, because sometimes I get bored and then I just don't complete it, because that happens. I try nowadays to record my colorings and card videos in more than one sitting, because it's always nice to just step out of the office. If it's only for a cup of water, glass of water, cup of coffee, that was what I was going to say, or if it is to go shopping with Christopher, take a walk, something. Just have that opportunity to move around a little bit. You will come back and you will sit down and you will feel, oh, I might want to change this, or I want to add this. And I was very, very scared of doing that when I started out, because I knew that my quality, my constant, my quantity quality sort of varied a lot, which meant that if I started with one and it was going really, really nicely, if I stepped away from that and came back later, it might not look as good as if I would just sit down and power through. But I've figured out lately that I don't have to worry about that anymore, because I'm now so experienced in coloring. When you color almost daily for years, you do get the experience. And sure, I have days when my creativity is really, really low and I'm really, really bad at things, and this is where I try to do completely other things. not pushing myself to do the craft thing, trying to make sure that I always have other works to do. So if I have one of those days when I feel like I can't really make a card, I already have a couple recorded, so I can sit down and edit them instead. And by doing that, I will have edited videos for days when I'm just not feeling editing and just want to record videos, but have a deadline and really need to get that video out. Then I have that video and I can just take that and I can use it and I can push it. So yeah, that's a little bit about that. God, I'm going on tangents today. I'm sorry, guys. But, you know, this is a 47-minute long video, so you get to get that. That's just how it is. Sorry. Anyhow, I'm going over this, and yeah, I did end up going over it twice so that I could just get a little bit of a better blend. And what I do, again, this is repeating things is awesome, because if it doesn't stick the first time or the second time or the 10th time, it might stick the 11th. So when I have colors that kind of bother me when they are not blending properly, the first step I do is I do my full blending all over for the first layer. And then when I go in with the second layer, I make sure that my darkest color overlaps the next to darkest just a bit, and the next to darkest overlaps the next to lightest just a little bit, and the next to lightest overlaps the lightest just a little bit more than it did before. Like you enhance that overlapping, because the Copics are translucent in a way. They're not fully opaque. Every layer you add will add more pigment, and therefore it will be darker, but also that means that you will have a different kind of layer where they first overlapped towards where they secondly overlapped, and that gives you a better gradient. So instead of having a 4-color gradient, you will have the equivalent of maybe a 7 or an 8-color gradient, and therefore you will get a better blend, because we don't really blend them, we just create gradients. That's how it works. Or we do blend them, but yeah, it's gradients. And therefore you can get a better blend. And you can work with this depending on which paper you enjoy working on. A paper like the Make It Crafty blending cardstock, which is a very dense paper, it can take much more layers. It's harder to blend on it, but it can take a lot more layer. But it's easier to blend on, say, a Nina, but a Nina paper is more porous, which means that it can bleed much easier, and because it can bleed more easier, it will definitely bleed if you add too many layers, because you will saturate the paper and the color will start spreading horizontally instead of vertically into the paper. So it's kind of the construction of the paper that will give you this difference. So yeah. So you can actually get away with 3 to 4 layers onto some of the Make It Crafty Copic paper. I tried a whole bunch of them. I was planning on making kind of a differences between different papers kind of tutorial, but I don't really know where to start, because it's not only about the papers, it's also about how you use your markers. You can be really good at using your markers on one paper, and then you might not be as good at working with another paper, even though the paper is quote unquote better, because you have a technique that works for the first paper, but the technique won't work for the second paper. I have a friend who have been doing Copic coloring for a long time, and she can actually do her coloring on ordinary Copic paper or copy paper. She is using thin copy paper to color on. It is super cool. Her coloring is awesome, but that means she doesn't layer in that way that I do, in any shape and form. Because if she would, the inks wouldn't move on the paper as they should. But her technique works perfectly for her because her creations are gorgeous. So you have to learn a technique that works with the paper you are working with. And in my case, I work with a paper that actually allows me to layer and making these blends much more deeper. So I did my black lines. I'm using a tea gray for all black on this image. And the reason for choosing tea gray is because it works actually really good with my RVs. All the grays are different. There are a subtle difference, but there is a difference between all the grays. If you want to have just two of the grays, then the cold grays and the warm grays are great because they are different enough to really have different areas that you want to use them for. If you want them all, you could choose to either go with the even numbers or the uneven numbers, because I usually use the even numbers. It's kind of my go-to. I go to the uneven numbers when my even number pens are starting to run out and I just don't have the energy to go in and refill them. But I usually use my even numbers, so you really don't need all of them, but I kind of like having them and having that opportunity to choose. And also I do use my uneven numbers for very light grays, because the C's and W's have the 001, but the T's and the N's doesn't. And then going for the 1 and 3, you can get a little bit of a lighter color, maybe adding a little bit of that 0 to that, because the 0 is really light, or mixing the 1 with the blending, or adding the blending pen, which doesn't have any color in it, it just have the blending medium, which helps pushing some of the pigment of the lightest color down into the paper and making it look lighter than it is. That is how they work. And that is how all of Copics work. Copics have alcohol in them, and in that alcohol, suspended in that alcohol, you have different pigments. Lighter pens have less pigment and more alcohol, and darker pens have more pigment and less alcohol. And when you color on your paper, that pigment lays on top of that paper. So when you color with a lighter pen on top of that, the alcohol in the pen will kind of push the color deeper down in the paper. If you use the blending pen on top of a very dark pen, you will see that it starts mottling, and that is because the alcohol won't push the color evenly down into the paper. And therefore you don't really want to use the colorless blender to lighten up a bigger area. However, it is very awesome to add details with, like if you want to have some kind of lighter pink dots on your darker pink dress, stuff like that, or lighting up the area so that your white gel pen actually pops a little bit better. I mostly use my blender pen to clean up areas, like I just did there, where I cleaned up where I accidentally colored out of the line of the bag. And that is a very good reason to actually own a blender pen or two, because they're awesome. I have two. I have one that is the sketch one. It could be the sketch or the chow. I just have all the sketch ones because I once decided I wanted to have the airbrush system, and the chow doesn't work with the airbrush system. I still haven't bought the airbrush system, but I might someday. so I used Sketch. But then I bought an original one because that has a bullet nib instead of the brush nib, and therefore you can get more unified dots. So now I have both of them, which I kind of like. So yeah. After coloring all the pinks and all the blacks on her clothing, I decided to go in with this skin, because I still haven't decided what her hair would be, but also because the skin would be lighter than the hair, and I rather put my lightest colors in first and the darker later, because if you go over the darker area, you might pick up some pigment on the nib of your lighter pen and you will get streaks. It's not pretty, and I've done it so many times, so I try to go with light first and dark later. For skin today, I'm using E04, E11, E21, E000, E00, E50, and some R. Yeah, might not use any R's today. R's. R. Sounding like a pirate. Sorry. Sounding like a pirate. We're now 31 minutes in, so now I'm kind of dropping off the deep end. So, when I do skin, I usually give her that little rim light. Rim light is, or reflective light, is when you have a little bit of light just at the edge of the thing you are trying to look around. And when you look at a person, wherever you are, if you look at your boyfriend or your cat or anything, you will see if it is a somewhat light room, it will have light from one source, which might be a window, and then you will see how that same light will reflect from the surfaces around that person. It would reflect back to that person. And when you're doing like complex coloring, you would tint those reflections depending on what kind of materials is around that person. So say you're out in the woods, you probably will have like a slightly brown or a slightly pink reflection on one of those rim lights, because it will pick up the surrounding colors. However, when I do stamps, I don't care about that, because I'm not always sure how I'm going to put the card together. I'm just coloring because it was fun to color, and then later on I go and make a card. Nowadays, most of my coloring is done with the camera on and taped down, so that it's going to be easy for you, and also so that I can just sit there and color, and then if I liked it, I can then just put the data into my computer and make a video like this for you guys. But the rim lights here are very, very light, very, very thin, and they're also a little bit artistic freedom. For example, she has a little rim light by the ear underneath her hair. There would probably most likely be quite a dark shadow there, so it wouldn't be a rim light. But I'm adding the rim light there because I want her cheek to pop against her hair. And that is something which I think is super fascinating with photography. Now that I've been watching like these 10,000 photography videos, is that a lot of the lights you see in a photo is lights that you have added to the picture just to get a cool effect, or to make it look more, or to make show off something. For example, a lot of photos, like profile pictures, photos like that, you will have, if you take it outdoors, you will have like the natural light from the sun, and then you will have someone sitting with a reflector to reflect back more light on the face to get it evenly lit so that you don't get any strange shadows. I think that is so cool. Also, I was watching a video from a guy who does art, who talked about lighting and lightning in art and in games, and and he were talking to us and then kind of zoomed out and showed that he was holding a sheet of white cardstock on one side of his face just to kind of use the light that was from the window that he got on the side and be able to shoot with the light on the side, and then using that white cardstock to get that reflective light onto his face so you could see his full face. But he also talked about how you add light in games, for example. You add lights underneath bushes, underneath places that isn't really realistic, but if you wouldn't add it, it will give the player a very dark experience, or it wouldn't show where things could be and such. So you add the lights just for those effects, which is super cool. I would really love how to work with lights in games. That would be super cool. There is actually a job. This is things that amaze me over and over. There's guys who just work with lighting scenes in video games. That's all they do, all day long. I follow one of those guys on Twitter because he seemed to be a cool guy. So yeah, I pick my knowledge how to color stuff from all over the place. From, like I said, photo tutorials, art tutorials, from watching things on TV to looking at how light reflects on trees when I'm out walking. I'm always looking at that. And I think that is, you don't have to, you really don't have to. For my first years, this was nothing I did. Most of my shadowing I learned by looking at how other people actually added their shadows and their details to their images, and then I just chose other colors and colored the same way because I didn't know how to, and I didn't have to know how to. There were so many resources out there to actually teach me those things. But when I came to a point where, well, I started to be in design teams, this was where things started to get to the next step. Because being in design teams or being guest designers, you use stamps that aren't released yet. So you don't have all of those resources to look at for those specific images. So then you have to start using Google and kind of Googling for the same poses or the same colors, and that kind of is an eye-opener. And then I've taken a couple of courses. I'm going in this, I have this course, an online course that is self-teaching, and you can do in any time frame that you want to. And I'm so behind because I don't have the schedule and I don't have the time to keep up with the schedule. But I do watch the videos now and then, and you get little details here and there, and you just pick them and you put them together in this little big, yeah, I love this. It's like telling a story. So yeah, I'm sorry if you are here to tell you how I did every little shadow and then talking about these abstract concepts and tips I have. If you really want to get into where do you put shadows in an image you never worked with before, which kind of color scheme would go good together, what would I do here and what would I do there, if that would be something that you really want to do, then I do recommend looking at more art tutorials. I will go into detail bit by bit, but art tutorials on YouTube, photo tutorials on YouTube about lighting and about stuff like that. It is really, really good resources. They are really, really good resources. So let's talk about coloring black while we're at it. I am using a lot of black in this image. I have the black details with my liners. I have the black stripes on her dress. I have her black hair, her black nails, and also black lips. I also am actually adding black lenses on her sunglasses. So yeah, that's a thing. So when you're coloring black, what you want to think about is that you do want to get depth. So just coloring with a black marker, you will get flat color. It will not look dimensional and it will not look realistic. Instead, you want to layer, and you want to layer a lot of different color, or a lot of different blacks on top of each other. I'm using 4 different colors for her hair, and I think I used 4 different colors for a dress also. And what I'm doing is I'm starting off with my deepest, darkest black. Black also lends itself to doing 2 layers. If you do 2 layers with black, you will really get those definitions and those details, I promise you. But you start with a black pen. You can use the 110 or the 100. It's up to you. They're very similar. They are different. They have a slight difference. One of them has a little bit more of a blacker tone and the other one has a little bit more of a browner tone. But I basically use the one that I reach first when I choose. Then you want to use a gray tone. In this case, I'm continuing with the T's because I think they really fit this color scheme and how I want her to look. But you can use whichever one, C, W, or N's also. And I start with the T10, which is the absolute darkest of the grays. All grays have the 10, 9, 8, and so forth. So I start with the 10 and just extending the black, but not too much. And there I went in with the E50 to fix that. That's a tip. If you actually happen to color over some of you already colored, go in with the lightest color that you have there, or the closest color to where you accidentally colored over, and use that pen to push the ink towards the edge of the image there. It makes it really, really easy. But back to black. Do the T10 and then I do the T8, where again I push and push and push these colors. And for the final color I use a 6. I don't go lighter than a 6 because then you start coming to the grayer area and you lose the black and you gain more light. And this is because by adding lighter colors, you will shift your midtone. And the midtone is your kind of real color. So if you're looking for, if you're gonna put together a color scheme, pick your midtones first. I wanted to have these colors. Make sure your midtones fit very good with, if you're gonna have pattern papers or if you're gonna do like an inked background or whatever, you want your midtones to fit with the rest of your card. Then you take, when you've chosen your midtones, you go to one darker color, you pick one darker color and one lighter color. You might just pick, if you want a midtone just between 2 pens, you can use 4 pens, and then those 2 pens have to be the 2 middle ones, and have one that is even darker and one that is even lighter. But the midtones is kind of what you then will think is your real color. So if you do use, say, a T4 as your lightest tone for the grey, you will shift the midtones so they will go from this really rich black to a much grayer tone, and then you will get your character to look like it has, in this case, grey hair. So I wouldn't recommend going under a 6 when doing greys or doing blacks, when you want it to look like you are doing blacks. Also, I don't leave white when I do black, because again, that shifts your midtone quite substantially. However, if I want to have a really cool black, like really like almost purplish or almost bluish black, the tip is to start your highlight out with a blue tone like the B60s, which is almost a purple, or go with a purple, or you can go, if you want a warmer tone, you could go with a slightly red tone as your highlights. You start off with that, and then you do all of the coloring on top, including your 6 gray, and you cover that blue or purple or something, and then you will really get a kind of cool color with that low purple tone in it, but it won't overwhelm, and it will look more like you have like just slight bluish reflections. I really like doing that. I do. So we are at the final minute in this video. I'm finishing this off. I'm giving her black lips. I started with the T6, decided, well, I'm going really dark, so I went in with the T9 at the deepest corners. Then I'm going in and giving her brown eyes, and I'm using the 20, the 49 as the darkest, because that is the darkest brown you can get, a 29 for the next color, and a 39 as the little bit lighter color, to just give her really deep dark brown eyes, and finishing off that with a B63 for the white shadows. And that is actually the whole coloring of her. And as I said, if you want to see this as the card making video, there will be a link up in the description down below, up in the right corner, and here. I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you liked it. If you do, please thumbs it up. If you want to see more of this, hit that subscribe button, and thank you again. Bye!